The next game that we're talking about here is the Philadelphia Eagles at the Minnesota Vikings. Philly wins this one 28-22. No Carson Wentz revenge game here in this one. Top 5 graded players that we had for the Eagles in this one: wide receiver Devontae Smith, a 90.5. Wide receiver A.J. Brown, an 85.2. Linebacker Zach Bond, an 83.2. Defensive tackle Jordan Davis, a 74.4. And then offensive guard Landon Dickerson, good to see him back out there, a 73.5. Jalen Hurts in this game, whoo, baby. Look at that number. 95.2. What a grade and a game from Jalen Hurts. On Minnesota's side of things, defensive tackle Levi Draco Rodriguez with a 79.2. I almost said Levi and Wuzurike just because every single time I see the name Levi, it's just like automatically, on Wuzurike, of course. No, Levi Drake Rodriguez in this case, the top man for the Vikings, is 79.2. Wide receiver Jalen Naylor is 74.6. Wide receiver Jordan Addison is 73.7. Safety Theo Jackson is 72.9. Offensive tackle Brian O'Neill a 72.6. And then Carson Wentz in this game with a 45.9. Dalton, stat told the story.
All right, I think we saw what everybody else saw with Jalen Hurts in this game, is that the Eagles finally got deep in the passing game. Again, they got the vertical shots going on the deep throws. Perfect 99.9 passing grade in this game. 5 for 6, 215 yards, 4 big-time throws, 3 of them touchdowns. You finally saw the Eagles just at times go, okay, we have these one-on-one shots, or once or twice Hurts improvising. Okay, we have A.J. Brown. We have Devontae Smith. Let's use those guys to our advantage, right? So there's 2 reasons I think schematically this happened. One, they did a much better job of just getting under center and operating more of their offense from under center. The most plays of the season in this game, 21 plays the Eagles ran from under center. I think running the ball from under center with Saquon and getting in the play-action game where you can take those deep shots, because it's been said over and over by a million outlets that this Eagles offense the first 6 weeks, it's not deceptive. Right? It doesn't allow, it allows, I should say, linebackers and safeties and things of that nature to just easily read things when they're constantly in the shotgun. This is another thing. We talked about this with the Falcons. I think it's a little bit with the Arizona Cardinals too. When you don't get under center at all, there are easier tells to an offense. The Eagles got under center more in this game. And the other thing, I thought they used motion better to help Jalen Hurts understand what coverages he was looking at. And you really need to do that against Brian Flores' defense when you talk about the blitz packages and all the different looks he throws at you. Because in past games, it's not that the motion rate in this game was necessarily any higher than any other game, but in past games, when the Eagles would use their motions, especially in the passing game, it didn't feel like they served any purpose. Mm-hmm. I could see very clearly, especially on a couple of these deep shots, that the motions that they were using with Brown and with Smith to get tells in the coverage had a legitimate purpose, this is man or this is zone, especially when Brian Flores has everybody stacked up on the line of scrimmage like he does. Is this going to be a zero blitz? Are we following across the formation with A.J. Brown in man-to-man coverage and I can chuck it up in one-on-one? Are we going to get a defense that doesn't follow and we're going to get a zone blitz and guys are going to drop off? I felt like there was more purpose to when the Eagles were sending guys in motion, and that really helped Jalen Hurts just lock in on, okay, I know what they're in. Even if they're coming, even if they're blitzing, I think that's a big reason why he was so much better against the blitz in this game when he struggled the rest of the season, was the motions, and Kevin Patullo helped him just a little bit to be more decisive. Give you shave a half a second off the decision-making going, okay, we're in man, we're chucking it up to 11. Mm-hmm. Fine, we can do that. Or I've got Devontae isolated, or I know it's zone coverage. Or even once in a while, look, Jalen, 5-6 times a game at least, he's going to improvise. And when he had to, he was good. He was really good when he had to improvise. And Devontae Smith, I thought, was a big part of that. But I think it's just you saw at least small tweaks between getting under center and motion with purpose that made the Eagles' passing game look a bit better. They didn't run the ball great, but this is a hard team to run on, too. The Vikings have.
It is.
When they're on, they have a good run defense, right? And they did in this game. But I thought Kevin Patullo, this was the first time this season I thought he really significantly helped Jalen Hurts out.
Yeah, and I'll sort of add on to that a little bit with some of the personnel that they actually ran in this game. So when you're going up against the Minnesota Vikings, especially when you're going up against the Minnesota Vikings at home, I would say, they're going to be aggressive, right? Brian Flores has been one of the most aggressive defensive coordinators in the NFL, basically for as long as he has been there. I believe they were number 1 in the NFL in blitz rate against the pass, heading into this week. So I thought the Eagles had a fantastic game plan to mitigate that. You mentioned some of getting under center and some of the motion and just getting a split second extra to really be able to make decisions. They also did that in the personnel. On 15.3% of their offensive plays, they were either in 12, 13, 22, or 23 personnel, meaning heavy stuff. We've got multiple tight ends or a tight end and a fullback or two tight ends and a fullback on the field. And what was the goal of that? Extra protection. Now, some of those times, and I noticed this, some of those times the tight ends weren't even blocking. Sometimes they would be attached to the line of scrimmage, like Dallas Goedert would be attached to the line of scrimmage, and I can't remember who else would be like sort of as the wingback or the fullback or whoever it was, but they wouldn't even be into pass protect, but their presence there forced whoever was the edge rusher for Minnesota to line up a little bit wider, take an extra step or two to get where they wanted to go. Or it took the blitzer an extra step just to get to the pocket, get to the line of scrimmage, and really affect or pressure Jalen Hurts. So the fact that they were in that heavier personnel also aided Jalen Hurts in having that little bit of extra time to make the decision. And then what was the game plan? All right, well, if you're going to blitz, guess what we know you're probably going to do a lot? Play man. We're going to bet on our guys. We're going to bet on Devontae Smith. We're going to bet on A.J. Brown. And that's what they did that game, and they won. That is why the Eagles, philosophically, fundamentally, and I should say in theory, have such a great offense because they can bring everything to you. They can attack defenses in so many different ways, and I think this was a great reminder. They had an 84.8 passing grade in those heavier personnels that I mentioned there, including one of the big throws in the second half to Devontae Smith where he was wide open over the middle of the field, which I think went for like 25 or 30 yards, and then the touchdown pass over the middle of the field to A.J. Brown came from that personnel package as well. They countered what Brian Flores was going to do with heavy personnel packages and betting on their guys to win one-on-one. And they won because of it. And I thought that was an excellent job by the Eagles philosophically in this game.
Well, if I had A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, I would bet on that too. And look, we have so many teams in the NFL that are 11 personnel teams, right? They want 3 wide receivers on the field at all times. The Rams, the Bengals, the Jacksonville Jaguars lately, especially without Brenton Strange, they want to be 11 personnel teams. The Eagles really never have been. It's never they'll get an 11 if they have to. They'll put a third receiver out there, but they've never really had in this run of of 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls and things like that. They've never really had a legitimate third wide receiver. If you had a third guy, it was probably Dallas Goedert playing tight end, right? So I think when you look at this team and just trying to use those formations and those personnel packages to dictate what you're going to see on defense and allow things. Okay, fine, bring up 8 in the box because we have more things to deal with that with 2 receivers and our tight end packages and even just the run game and the threat of Saquon Barkley still. And look, do they still need to get more efficient in the run game? Yeah, sometimes it's a hard team to run on too in Minnesota. They got good players in their front 7, but I think it just comes down to finding and using this part of the season. While they're still winning games, they're still 5-2, using this part of the season to go, okay, what is just our ideal personnel packages?
Right.
How often should we be under center? How can we find a way to run the football better than we have been, right? They're still 5-2, which is why there shouldn't be all-out panic, right? It's concerning that they haven't looked great offensively in the early part of the season, but they've had stretches like this before. Or you get to the trade deadline and you go, man, yeah, they traded for Dotson last year, I know, but you go, okay, maybe it's somebody else. We find somebody as a third wide receiver who could help us and mix it up a little bit more. Or we find maybe a second back to give Saquon Barkley a breather because we don't see much of A.J. Dillon or Will Shipley, right? They're not really getting a whole lot out of those guys. So I think some teams are more multiple. Some teams sit just in 11. And I think you're right that the Eagles tightening things down a little bit did help them a lot. And I get under center, get multiple tight ends, and look, more bodies up front. If those 5 guys on the offensive line aren't run blocking that well, put extra bodies in there. Just see what happens. They do have time with their record and with as much talent as they have to experiment a little bit.
Right.
And I like that they did that in this game.
Sort of in the same vein, most impressive is A.J. Brown to me. 6 targets, 4 catches, 121 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. And then on the other side of the coin, what was most disappointing was the Vikings in man coverage specifically in this game. In man coverage, their corners and safeties specifically. So I took linebackers out of it. So just the corners and safeties, 31.2 secondary coverage grade in man coverage with 2 of those passing touchdowns allowed in man coverage. One of them was the Josh Metellus play. where it's A.J. Brown and he just has no chance at that point to cover him that long. So you don't take a ton of blame in that one. But the other one was, like I mentioned, a man coverage play where A.J. Brown scored his second touchdown in that game. And so it was the game plan just didn't work this week for what the Vikings wanted to do, and they knew that they were going to have to blitz and play a little bit of man in the times they were going to get aggressive. And when they did blitz and didn't play zone, when it was more of a blitz and play man situation, the Eagles made them pay for it.
Yeah, no, I think that touchdown was really interesting too on my point about Brown and putting him in motion to really start to dictate things, because it was man-to-man coverage, and Isaiah Rodgers, I believe it was following Brown over, and then he and Metellus, I don't know what happened, but they switched it for some reason where Metellus ended up on Brown as he got to the end of his motion.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they just kind of messed up the switch. And those things can happen too when you have guys motioning across the formation. And, I think it was a worthy gamble for Brian Flores to take, because he's a blitzing guy anyway. He's going to do it. But considering what we'd seen the first 6 weeks from Jalen Hurts, yeah, I'd probably blitz him too. I get it. Sometimes that's just the gamble and it doesn't pay off, and Hurts beat it. So be it.